Chapter 6. Dinner is an important part of the day. There are, I have decided, exactly two kinds of people in a crisis: the ones who freeze, and the ones who sprint directly at the source of the crisis at full speed with their arms wide open. Law is the second kind. Aggressively. I had maybe half a second of warning, a familiar shape peeling out of the smoke, a familiar voice yelling something that was either my name or a war cry. It is genuinely hard to tell with him. And then I was being crushed against a chest that smelled like soot, sweat, and approximately one full demon's worth of residual ash. Ren! Law. Ren! Oh my God! Law. You are killing me. I am hugging you. Yes, to death. He pulled back just enough to look at my face, hands still clamped on my shoulders like he was personally responsible for keeping me attached to the planet. Then, because Law has never met a social cue in his life and would not recognize one if it walked up and introduced itself by name, he leaned in to kiss my cheek. He did not get there. There was a sound, a very specific sound, the sound of a very expensive sword being drawn very fast and stopped very precisely against the side of a very surprised neck. I did not have to look. I knew exactly whose hand was on the hilt. Lucas had not changed his expression. Lucas had not, as far as I could tell, blinked. Lucas had crossed approximately 4 feet of space in what mathematically should have been 0 seconds, and was now standing at Law's shoulder with the tip of his blade resting against Law's jugular, like a polite suggestion that throats were technically optional. Law froze. Slowly, very, very carefully. His eyes slid sideways, took in the sword, took in the prince attached to the sword, took in the prince's expression, which was the expression of a man calmly weighing whether murder counted as a personality flaw or a personality feature. And then Law smiled, because of course he did. Hey, handsome, he said. Kalma, just saved you, remember? Lucas, I said. The sword did not move. Lucas. He is a friend. A muscle in Lucas's jaw did something that was not quite a twitch. Slowly, very slowly, with the air of a man making a personal sacrifice for the good of the realm, he lowered the blade. Not sheathed it, just lowered it. The distinction mattered to him. I could tell. Law exhaled like a man who had just been informed his organs were going to remain in their original configuration. And then, because he is Law, he immediately recovered and looked at me with bright, profoundly inappropriate curiosity. So, quick question. Who are these people, and where are we? And I want you to know I am asking this with love. What the hell is happening, Ren? I let the silence sit. Behind him, Kilo was draped over his shoulder like a small warm parasite, half asleep, drooling faintly onto Law's collar. Bass was standing 2 steps back doing his best impression of a piece of furniture. Atlas was idly holding what appeared to be most of an ogre. Ordy was already writing in his itinerary. Wow, I said. 3 business days to load in, huh? Ren. Okay, introductions. We are doing this. Try to keep up. I walked him down the line. Atlas, half-giant, polite nod, looked like a barn that had learned to feel things. Ordy, half-elf, perfect posture, pen still moving. Bass, who I introduced as complicated and left at that. Shu-shu, sitting on a rock with the dignified disdain of a creature who had been alive longer than most religions. Kilo on Law's shoulder. Demon. Long story. Do not feed him after midnight, mostly because he will not wake up for it. And finally, last, deliberately last, the prince currently standing 2 inches closer to my left elbow than the situation strictly required. And this, I said, is my fiancé. Law's entire system blue-screened. You could see it happen. The lights went out behind his eyes for a full 3 seconds. When they came back on wrong. Yes, Law. Fiancé? Long story. Bath first. Move. We moved. He fell into step beside me as the others walked ahead, and for about 10 seconds neither of us said anything, which is the longest Law has ever gone without speaking in his life and probably constituted some kind of personal record. So, I said, what happened on your end? He was quiet for another beat. Then, the lab is gone, Ren. Not, like, fire gone. Not explosion gone. Gone in a way that nobody has invented a word for yet. There is a hole where the lab used to be, and the hole is the wrong shape, and nobody who looks at it can describe it twice the same way. He scratched the back of his neck. Troy organized a search and rescue inside of an hour, filed paperwork, made calls, got a grid going. You know, Troy. Troy. Troy, he agreed. And you joined the search. Obviously. For how long? A while. Law. I might not have slept. I stopped walking, just for a second. Then started again, because if I stopped for longer than a second, he would notice and we would have to talk about it. Law treats sleep as a sacred religious practice. Law has scheduled naps the way other people schedule meals. Law not sleeping meant something I did not want to do the math on in public. They told me to go home eventually, he said. I crashed on the couch, woke up falling. There was a crater. There was a floating child trying to drain my soul. I figured, okay, stress dream. Weird one. Very detailed. I have had worse. You fought an ancient sin, I said, because you thought it was a stress dream. I was not going to just lie there, Ren. That is exactly what stress dreams are for, Law. And then I saw you, he said, like that was the answer to everything. And the dream stopped being a dream, because you were really there, and I was really here. And we are doing this, huh? He looked around at the road, the fields, the village rising out of the dusk in front of us. We are really doing this. You are needed here, I said quietly. I do not know how I know that. I just know it. Same way I knew the second I landed in this place that I was not getting sent home anytime soon. Your mom is going to lose her mind. She is also eventually going to understand. I think. I hope. I do not know how time works between here and there yet, but I am working on it. Law nodded once. Okay? Just okay. Just like that. Like I had asked him to switch seats on the bus. That is the thing about Law. You forget, between the chaos and the volume and the bear hugs, how much of him is just unconditionally there. Then his face changed. Ren. What? Troy is going to lose his mind. He already lost his mind. You said, no. I was in the search party, Ren. I was a member of the search party. I am also now missing. Troy currently has a search party with a law-shaped hole in it. Troy is going to think we planned this. We did not plan this. I know that, but Troy does not know that. And Troy is very thorough. From somewhere around my ankles, Shu-shu said, I looked down. Not a word. Shu-shu. I made a note mentally to figure out exactly how many distinct meanings that cat could pack into one syllable. I was up to 9. We did not make it to the inn. The village chief found us first. He was short, round, alarmingly cheerful, and had clearly been told approximately 90 seconds ago that the Crown Prince of Balestia was currently standing in his town square smelling faintly of demon and was now operating on pure hospitality adrenaline. Inn, he said. No, absolutely not. Out of the question. He had rooms, he had a kitchen, he had food. He had, and I quote, everything any saviors could possibly need. And if we did not stay under his roof tonight, he was going to take it as a personal failure and cry about it in front of his children. I looked at Lucas. Lucas looked at me. Lucas looked at the chief. Lucas, in the tone of a man who has been bullied into hospitality his entire life and has developed exactly one coping mechanism for it, said, "Thank you." The chief beamed, like the sun had spoken to him directly. Edenmere, I should mention, is, according to the briefing I had been half listening to in the throne room about 1,000 years ago, the most industrious mining and crafts village in the entire region. They had a forge district, they had quotas, they had a literal queue system for kiln access. And the demon of sloth had picked here, of all the places in the kingdom. He had walked into the most caffeinated village on the map and tried to make everyone take a nap. Even his targeting was lazy. Inside the chief's house it was warm and loud and full of too many people and twice as much food as a table that size had any business holding. A small child was openly staring at Kilo with the awed expression of a kid meeting a celebrity, An elderly woman had cornered Bass against a wall and was personally feeding him root vegetables one at a time. Bass was accepting them. Bass had the expression of a man for whom this was somehow the most threatening situation he had been in all week. "Bath," I said weakly. The chief's wife pointed. I went. "I am going to say something now that I want on the record. Hot water is a religious experience. I do not care how cool it sounds to be sarcastic about it. I do not care that I have been making a personality out of being unimpressed by this entire kingdom for 6 chapters. There is a point at which a person has been smacked around by a demon, summoned a second demon into existence by accident, walked across half a forest, hugged at full velocity by a best friend who should not exist on this continent, and called somebody his fiancé out loud in front of witnesses. There is a point. And at that point, when you lower yourself into actual real hot water for the first time in a week, you make a sound. The sound is not dignified. I will not be transcribing it. When I finally crawled out, towel-wrapped and approximately 40% more human, I opened the door to find a folded set of clean clothes on the floor outside. Plain. Practical. My size. No note. I knew whose they were. I picked them up. I looked at them for a second too long. I closed the door. I filed the moment in a folder, in my head, labeled things I can no longer pretend I did not notice. The folder was getting full. I did not open it. I closed it. I went to dinner. Dinner was chaos in the warmest possible sense of the word. The chief's table was long and crowded and groaning under more food than 9 people could reasonably eat, which was good because Law alone counted as approximately 3. He was already eating. He had been eating since before I sat down. Kilo was curled against his side with his eyes half closed, gently siphoning energy off Law like a tiny parasitic phone charger, and Law was so completely unbothered by this that I had to explain it to the table. "He is a phone charger," I said. "Law runs on procrastination. Kilo eats energy. They are functionally the same organism. It is disgusting. It is also probably why Kilo stopped fighting. He found his people." "I am right here," Law said, mouth full. "I know." Atlas, on my left, made a low rumbling sound that I eventually identified as a laugh. He was, as far as I could tell, the largest individual piece of person I had ever sat next to. He did not loom so much as exist on a scale that reorganized the room around him. Lucas had picked him personally. He was, Lucas had said, the strongest fighter I have ever recruited. I had pictured someone terrifying. Atlas was, instead, the kind of person who carefully passed you the bread before you knew you wanted it. "Half giant," he said when I asked, like this was a piece of weather. "On my mother's side. Earth element. I am a farmer mostly. My grandparents raised meafter." He did not say after what. He said after with the small, careful pause of a man who had a whole story behind that word and had decided the dinner table was not where it lived. I did not push. I clocked it. I filed it. New folder. "Show him," Lucas said without looking up from his plate. Atlas set down his bread. He put one hand flat on the stone floor. Just rested it there, the way you'd rest a hand on a table to check if it was warm. Nothing happened for 1 second. Then the floor happened. A low pulse moved outward from his palm, slow and certain, the way a heartbeat moves through something alive. The crack running along the flagstone nearest the wall, the one I had been idly looking at since we sat down, closed, neatly, like a seam being pressed shut by someone who had done it 1,000 times and found it mildly boring. Then the loose stone by the door settled flush with the ones around it. Then everything was still. Atlas picked his bread back up. "That's the earth element," he said. "And the other thing?" Law asked. Atlas looked at him. Then, without standing, without setting down his bread, he reached one hand under the corner of the dinner table and lifted it. The whole table. Off the floor. 6 inches. Held it there. Plates, cups, food, all of it perfectly level. Then set it back down, without a sound. Kept eating. My water did not even spill. "Okay," I said. "Was that necessary?" Ordy said, in the calm voice of a man who had been recalculating his itinerary in real time. "He asked," Atlas said serenely. "I did not ask. You were about to." I had not been about to. He was absolutely right. "Ordy," Ordino Luxeropan, the most aggressively complete name I had ever heard delivered without a pause for breath, was sitting across from me with the posture of someone for whom slouching was a moral failing. Half-elf. He did not remember any of that side of himself. His mother had been an elf, that was all he knew, and after she was gone he had been raised by his uncle, a former general knight whose name he said with the reverence other people saved for saints. He had a small, leather-bound book open beside his plate. It was color-coded. It was tabbed. He was, I realized with rising joy, the kind of person who color-coded an itinerary, and I respected him on a cellular level. "Plant magic," he said when asked, "and I can communicate with non-speaking animals." "Non-speaking," I repeated. "Yes." I looked at Shu-shu, who was sitting in the exact center of the table on a placemat that he had not been given and had simply chosen, ignoring the food and ignoring the people, and ignoring, with particular precision, Ordy. Ordy looked at Shu-shu. Shu-shu looked through Ordy with the expression of a creature considering whether this was even worth a It was not. He looked away. The silence said everything. Nobody commented. Nobody had to. Bass had been passed a bowl by the elderly aunt at some point and was now eating soup, slowly, like a man who had not been certain he was allowed to. Nobody had said anything to him. Nobody had announced anything. Someone had simply put food in front of him, and he had accepted it. And that was, in its small, quiet way, more humanizing than any speech I could have made on his behalf. I noticed Lucas notice it. Lucas did not comment. Lucas filed it. Different folder. Across the table, I reached for the bread and almost took the candle with it. Lucas caught it, not quickly, not urgently, the way you catch something you already knew was going to fall before it started falling. His hand was just there, steady, setting it back in place without a word, without looking at me, without making it a thing. He had been watching me that whole time. That was the only explanation for the timing. He had been watching me, and I had not known. And now I did, and I was going to need a moment with that information that I did not currently have. Law had witnessed all of this. Naturally. "Hey," he said, at a volume meant only for me. "What?" "Does he do that a lot?" I tried to answer casually. The casual answer did not show up. What showed up instead was the truth, slightly too honest, arriving with its shoes already off like it lived here. "He does that a lot." Law looked at Lucas, looked at me. The easy grin was gone. What replaced it was something I had only seen on Law's face a handful of times when something real got through the easy charm and landed. He was moved. He was trying not to show it and failing, which, for Law, meant he was very moved. He said nothing. That was how I knew. A few minutes passed. "Hey." "What?" "Stop doing that with your face." "I'm genuinely not doing anything with my face." "Ren." A pause. "You are doing so much with your face right now." I looked at my plate. I looked at the bread. I looked at everything in the room that was not Lucas. The ring on my hand was warm. It had an opinion about all of this. I was choosing, for the time being, not to ask what it was. It was Bass who broke the mood, eventually, not on purpose. He set down his soup. He looked at the table. He waited until everyone, slowly, had stopped chewing. "You should know," he said, "what is coming." Quiet. "The Demon Lord," he said, "does not work alone. He has 7. He did not say 7 what. He did not have to. The way he said it gave it the capital letter for free. The 7 deadly sins. They are not myth. They are not metaphor. They are field operatives. Each of them was, assigned to a region, to soften it, to prepare it. Sloth was the first to deploy. He looked down at the table. There are 6 more, somewhere, and nobody on this side of the war knows where. Nobody spoke. The chief's wife had stopped pouring. The little boy who'd been staring at Kilo had stopped staring. The food was going cold in the middle of the table in a way I had never seen food go cold so fast. Then Law, without missing a single beat, looked down at the small purple parasite asleep against his ribs. "So," he said, "you have brothers?" I have to be honest. I did not think it was going to work. Watching Law try to interrogate Kilo was like watching a man try to negotiate with a heated blanket. He started gentle. Soft pokes. A piece of bread offered like a bribe. Patient waiting. Earnest, calm, completely without judgment. The thing nobody had told Law, because nobody had figured it out yet, was that Kilo had no allegiance whatsoever to the Demon Lord. Kilo had allegiance to being warm, being fed, and not having to move. Law was warm. Law was fed. Law was, somehow, the most physically comfortable surface in the entire kingdom. So eventually, slowly, with the air of a creature who was doing this purely because the alternative was being talked at for longer, Kilo opened one eye and started speaking. His voice was small and floaty and far away, like he was narrating a dream he was still inside. He was the eldest, he said, of 7. He looked like a child because growing up required sustained effort, and he had assessed that effort and declined. He had not been ordered to Edenmere specifically. He had detected a power signature he had not recognized, which, for Sloth, was the equivalent of a 5-alarm motivational emergency, and he had followed it out of vague curiosity. He had gotten turned around. Edenmere had been there. He had stopped. He did not say whose power signature, nobody asked. I knew. Lucas knew. Shu-shu absolutely knew. We all let it sit. Kilo's siblings were still out there, he said. He did not know where. He did not know in what order. He had not attended the briefing. He had been asleep. I sat with that for a moment. Then I narrated it, quietly, to nobody and everybody. Our primary intelligence source on the 7 deadly sins is the eldest sin himself, who skipped the briefings, wandered into enemy territory by accident following a feeling, and is currently using my worst friend as a heated mattress. This is the quality of information warfare we are working with. Hey, said Law, you are my worst friend, Law. That is fair. The thing is, and I am noticing this now, out loud for the first time, Bass was sent here to spy on us. Bass is now eating root vegetables at our dinner table. Kilo was sent here to drain a village. Kilo is now named after a unit of weight and asleep on a procrastinator. We are, against every narrative principle I know, accidentally building a demon collection. I do not know how this keeps happening. I am beginning to suspect it is me. The mark, Shu-shu said from the middle of the table. He had been waiting for this opening for a long time, and you could hear it in his voice. Above the right eye, we should discuss it. Everyone turned. Law, who had completely forgotten there was a glowing gold mark on his face, blinked. Oh, yeah. That. Mark of God, Shu-shu said. Vassal system, ancient, rare, not seen in this kingdom for a very long time. He was using his lecture voice. The cat had a lecture voice. I had not known until that exact moment, and I was going to be unpacking that for weeks. The summoner has the power to create vassals, to mark them, to grant or to amplify the abilities they already carry. The bond is permanent. The bond is also, in this case, mutual. He looked at Law. He looked at me. You called him. He answered. I accidentally conscripted my best friend, I said. Hey, said Law, mouth full again. Free upgrade. What is the upgrade? I said, looking at Shu-shu. Specifically. Shu-shu told him before he told me, which was honestly fair. Law's gifts were already in him, the cat said. The vassal bond had not created them. It had unlocked them. Physical strength that politely rewrote what a person was supposed to be capable of. Weapon mastery, intuitive, instant, unconscious. You could put anything into Law's hands, and his body would already know what to do with it. The boulder, the fight. All of it suddenly made sense in a way that was, in retrospect, almost insulting in how obvious it should have been. Cool, said Law. Cool, 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 cool. Okay, I said. Great, wonderful, good for him. What about mine? Shu-shu turned his head approximately 1 degree. Did you ask? He said. There was a beat. I am asking now. Shu-shu, cat. Best friend. Light of my... I will give you a hint. The whole table was listening. Even Bass. Even Atlas, who had been demolishing a loaf of bread in slow, methodical bites, paused mid-chew. You can manipulate matter, Shu-shu said, as long as you understand it. Everything went quiet inside my head. The sword, the rust, the way I had looked at Lucas's blade in the East Garden and known, the way an engineer knows exactly which parts of the iron lattice were unhappy, and which bonds were about to give, and what would happen if the right impurity found the right grain at the right humidity. I had not cast a spell. I had not chanted anything. I had looked at the sword. I had understood it, and the understanding had been the spell. I did not say anything dramatic. I did not stand up. I sat with it, the way you sit with the answer to a math problem you have been chewing on in the back of your head for years. I filed it, slowly, carefully, in a folder that had its own folder. Then I said, "Then why did we do the whole ceremony with old Arthur?" Shu-shu without hesitation. "Did you ask?" "No." It was at this exact point that I started to understand that not asking the cat was going to be the great running tragedy of my entire life in this kingdom. Law, having absorbed approximately 4 cosmic revelations in 5 minutes, looked across the table, focused, and properly saw Ordy for the first time. He stopped chewing. Then, like he was identifying a true fact about the universe and not, hitting on a man at a stranger's dinner table, he said, "Hey, so, what is your name again, pretty one?" Ordy's pen stopped moving, just for a second, just long enough to be noticeable to anyone who had been watching Ordy's pen, which was currently me. He recovered fast. His voice, when it came, was clipped and cool and exactly a quarter second too quick. "Ordino Luxeropan." "Hi, Silver," Ordy blinked. "That is not my name." "I know. My name is Ordino Luxeropan." "Mm-hmm. You may call me Ordy." "Sure thing, you." The pen resumed moving, slightly faster than before. I should have looked away. I did not look away. What was happening across that dinner table was the kind of thing that happens in slow motion when one person decides, quietly and without announcement, that another person is worth the specific effort of sustained attention, and the other person knows it and wishes they didn't know it, and keeps making their handwriting neat anyway because neat handwriting is the only thing currently between them and whatever comes after neat handwriting. Law never said Ordy. Never said Ordino. He said Silver and you and Pretty One, and every single time Ordy absorbed it with the controlled stillness of someone diffusing something that had already gone off. By the end of dinner, the itinerary had 3 new margin notes that had nothing to do with the itinerary. I read one of them upside down by accident. It said stop. I did not investigate who it was addressed to. Some things you know without asking. A few minutes later, somebody spilled something. Soup, wine, water. It does not matter. And Law, without looking, without thinking, reached for a cloth and offered it across the table to Ordy. Not to anyone else. To Ordy. First instinct, no reason. Ordy looked at the cloth, looked at Law. Law had already moved on, talking to Atlas about ogres. Ordy took the cloth, used it, folded it back exactly the way it had been folded when it was handed to him, and returned it. Their hands did not touch. It was a near thing. Ordy's face did something Ordy's face had not, I suspected, done in professional company in years. He returned to his itinerary. The handwriting was, demonstrably, less precise than usual. Across the table, Kilo opened his eyes a fraction, looked at Ordy, and with the same lazy gravity he had aimed at Lucas and at me and at every other person in this story he had decided was important, started drifting in Ordy's direction. "Kilo," Law said. Kilo ignored him. "Kilo, no." Kilo continued drifting. "He likes you," Law said, delighted. "It is a demon," said Ordy. "It is a demon with taste." Ordy added a margin note to his itinerary. Kilo drifted another inch closer. I did not say anything. I did not need to. Atlas, on my left, very quietly nodded to himself. "What?" I said. "Nothing," Atlas said. "You nodded." I was agreeing with myself. About what? Atlas serenely tore a piece of bread in half and offered half of it to Ordy as Ordy walked past, needing something to do with his hands. 2 seconds later, Law appeared looking for food. Atlas handed him bread without breaking eye contact with the candle in front of him. He fed everyone at that table at least once during dinner. He commented on nothing. He was, I was now certain, the single most emotionally intelligent person in this entire kingdom. And nobody but me was ever going to know it. We were going to take that secret to our graves together. We had not discussed it. We did not need to. He passed me the salt. People drifted. Plates were cleared. The chief's wife began the long, sacred process of trying to feed us a second dinner, and was gently talked down. Atlas helped clear without being asked. Bass was led off to a quiet corner to sit with the elderly aunt, who had decided that he was hers now and was not, apparently, taking input on the matter. Kilo had to be physically detached from Law's side and reattached to a folded blanket, where he immediately, without complaint, resumed snoring. Somehow, in the slow dispersal of bodies, Law and Ordy ended up the last two in the common room. Neither of them had planned it. I am almost certain of this. Almost. I caught it from the doorway, just for a second, on my way past. Law was sitting on the bench by the low fire, all loose limbs and easy posture. Ordy was sitting near him, not next to him, but near, with his itinerary open on his lap and his pen, for once, completely still. "Can't sleep?" Law was saying. I was reviewing the itinerary. "At this hour. It requires updating." Law looked at him for one beat. Did not push. Just settled back against the wall and started talking. About nothing. About the village. About the road tomorrow. About how Kilo snored like a much larger and more disappointing animal. Ordy did not tell him to stop. I watched him pick up his pen again, after a moment. I watched him write a line. Cross it out. Write it again. His handwriting was demonstrably less precise than usual. He noticed. I could tell he noticed. He did not investigate why. I kept walking. The steps outside the inn were cold, and the sky over Edenmere was the kind of clear that only happens after something bad has finished happening, like the night itself had exhaled. I sat down. I tipped my head back. I did not think about anything in particular, which was the first time I had managed that all day, and it felt honestly a little like surviving something. I heard him before I saw him. Not footsteps. Lucas moved too quietly for footsteps to be useful information. Just the shift in the air. The specific quality of stillness that arrived when he did, like the atmosphere adjusted to make room for him without being asked. He didn't sit. He just stood there for a moment beside me, looking at the same sky. And I did not say anything because I had learned, slowly and against my will, that Lucas in a quiet moment was a different thing than Lucas in a room full of people. And I had also learned that speaking first usually ended the quiet moment, and I was not ready to end it. He looked down at me. Just once. The way you look at something you've been thinking about and haven't decided what to do with yet. Then he said, "You did well today." That was it. That was the whole thing. 4 words, delivered without ceremony, without eye contact, into the middle distance like he was reporting a fact to the sky and I happened to be nearby. Then he went inside. The door closed behind him with a soft, definitive click. I sat there. I sat there for what was probably too long. "You did well today." From Lucas, who communicated in silences and sword movements and things left outside doors without notes, those 4 words were... I was not going to finish that sentence. I was going to sit with the night air and the clear sky and the not finishing of that sentence for as long as I needed to, which is when I noticed them. Shu-shu was on the step below mine. Kilo was floating approximately 2 feet to his left. They were, and I want to be precise about this, facing each other. Not the way a cat and a sleeping demon sloth end up near each other by accident. Facing. Deliberately. The way 2 people face each other when they are in the middle of a conversation that has been going on for longer than anyone watching would know. I don't know how long they had been there. I don't know what they had been saying. What I know is that the moment I focused on them, the moment my attention sharpened from vaguely aware of animals nearby to wait, they both stopped. Shu-shu looked at me. Kilo looked at me. 2 pairs of ancient eyes. One yellow-green, luminous and unreadable. One barely open, heavy-lidded, and somehow worse for it. The silence lasted exactly 1 breath too long. Then Kilo closed his eyes, drifted half an inch to the left, resumed the specific floating stillness of a creature pretending to be asleep. Shu-shu looked away, tucked 1 paw under himself. Said nothing. "What was that?" I said. Shu-shu said, Not the usual Not the hum that meant I heard you, and I am choosing not to engage. This one was different, smaller, the hum of a creature who had been caught doing something and had decided that the best response was to become, technically, a cat again. I looked at Kilo. Kilo did not look back. Kilo was, as far as anyone watching was concerned, deeply asleep and had been for some time. The night air was very still. The village was quiet. Somewhere behind me, through the walls of the inn, my entire ridiculous accidental party was asleep under one roof for the first time. I looked at the sky. I looked at Shu-shu. I looked at the small ancient sin floating 2 feet away, pretending with great commitment to be a harmless sleeping sloth. Shu-shu. What do you know? He looked at me then, really looked, the way he did sometimes when the cat performance thinned and whatever was underneath it looked out instead. Old, vast, patient in a way that had nothing to do with waiting and everything to do with already knowing how things ended. He said, "Get some rest, Ren." Then he closed his eyes. And that was somehow the most frightening thing anyone had said to me all day. I went inside. I went to bed. I stared at the ceiling for longer than I want to admit. Tomorrow, the road. Tonight, I had a feeling, had been the easy part.